I always thought peace had a sound. The slow groan of my wooden bridge as it flexed, trout ticking the creek below, wind sliding through the pines. For 15 years, that bridge carried nothing heavier than my pickup and a couple neighbor kids wobbling across on bikes. Then one morning, a new sound rolled in: deep, grinding diesel and the hungry roar of a cement truck. And behind the wheel was HOA President Karen herself, waving like she'd bought the place. By the time I got outside, the bridge was shivering, mud corkscrewing in the water, my temper climbing to match. I told her she was trespassing. She gave me that smirk and said, "Then maybe you should build a stronger bridge, Mike." That's when I realized it wasn't about concrete. It was about control. She figured she could roll over me the same way she rolled over my bridge. She was wrong. Before we get into it, tell me where you're watching from, and hit subscribe because you won't believe how this bridge fight ends. The creek behind my cabin is the kind of quiet, stubborn thing that ignores calendars. Spring snowmelt turns it into a pushy brown ribbon. August shrinks it down to a strip of glass. 15 years ago, when I signed the deed, I built my bridge across that line with Miguel and a rented post-pounder. We measured between bedrock shelves, drove pilings through packed gravel, set beams, lag-bolted stringers, and decked it with kiln-dried planks I sealed by hand while Scout, my golden retriever, sat on the bank supervising like he'd been hired. It wasn't a trophy. It was a promise. I could come home without asking permission. Promise is a boundary made out of wood. People forget that. When the HOA formed 2 years ago, I didn't fight it. I even paid the first assessment, $50 for neighborhood beautification, because I like a decent streetlight as much as anyone. But HOAs grow like ivy. Slow, polite, and suffocating if you let them. Karen got elected president the way a thunderstorm elects itself. Suddenly, loudly everywhere. She loved clipboards, urgent emails, and saying, "For the community," the way a chef salts everything. Her first letter to me was framed like a favor, courtesy reminder. Front setbacks must remain clear of non-compliant structures. Attached was a photo of my canoe rack, 20 feet inside my line, minding its own business. I replied with my survey and a polite note. Respectfully, my front setback begins at the county right-of-way, not the creek. The bridge and approach are private, she answered with a smiley face. Let's discuss at the next board meeting. At that meeting she arrived with a laminated map printed from who knows where. Wrong scale, no topo, the creek drawn like a cartoon snake. She tapped it with her pen. As you can see, both approaches to the bridge provide ingress and egress to community amenities. That places them under HOA purview. I held up my real survey, the one stamped by Carson County, bearings tied to iron pins sunk before our subdivision had a name. As you can see, Karen, I said, matching her cadence, the West Bank lies entirely within my metes and bounds. The county easement ends 50 feet up the gravel lane at that post. The bridge isn't an amenity. It's my driveway. A few neighbors shifted, eyes flicking between my paper and her laminate like they were watching tennis. Karen kept smiling the way people smile at toddlers announcing physics isn't real. We'll take this under advisement, she said. HOA will do what we want. 2 weeks later, I found the first cement truck rattling across my boards, the bridge thumping like a drum. Men in neon vests rode the running boards like ornaments. They were headed to Phase 1, some future tennis complex with more funding than votes. The driver waved like we were buddies. I waved back with my whole arm and every finger but one. I moved fast after that. I sank a cedar post at the mouth of my approach and bolted on a reflective sign. Private bridge. 5-ton limit trespassers will be prosecuted. Then I stretched a chain between 2 bollards with a keyed latch. Because people respect steel more than words. I called Karen. You're trespassing, I said. We're improving the neighborhood, she replied. A little cooperation would go a long way. Cooperation happens between equals, I said. Not between a deed and a committee. She exhaled through her nose, her version of a laugh. I'll send compliance to take a look. Send a surveyor, I said, and hung up. By lunchtime, the chain had been cut and the sign was gone. In its place, zip-tied to my post, hung a pastel notice in cheerful font. NON compliance. Unauthorized restrictive device. Remove within 24 hours or be fined. I photographed the notice. Then the boot prints leading toward the creek. Then the sheared padlock glittering in the dirt. Paper can lie. Pictures don't. Neighbors picked sides the way people pick weather forecasts, whatever matched their plans. Hannah from 2 doors down texted, "I'm with you. This is ridiculous." Darren from the cul-de-sac posted in the forum, "Bridges are meant to be crossed. Don't be selfish." Miguel brought coffee and a raised eyebrow. "They're bold. They're bored," I said. "Bold gets you a statue. Bored gets you stupid." Karen scheduled another meeting. I went, for the board members who still remembered we were neighbors. She'd set the chairs in a circle, the classic steamroll, but make it look like dialogue. A projector threw slides on the wall. Community access plan. Phase 1 pickleball courts. Perfect toothed families. Clip art of a creek that didn't have my bridge. "Mike," she purred. "We recognize your contribution to the spirit of this community." "Spirit isn't binding," I said. "Surveys are." She clicked to easement clarification and read a paragraph that sounded official if you didn't listen too hard, citing a landscaping policy manual and a statute that applied to public subdivisions, not private parcels. I waited, then set a manila folder on the table like I was laying down aces. Inside, my warranty deed, recorded plat, county GIS printout, and a letter from the road commission chair confirming, in the most boring language imaginable, that the public easement ends at the gravel lane and doesn't include private structures spanning natural watercourses. Karen skimmed the first line, smiled wider, and slid the folder back like I'd offered her cake. "We'll have council review," she said. "In the meantime, construction continues." "In the meantime," I said, "trespass continues." That night I stood on the bridge and listened. The creek spoke in steady syllables. Stones knocking, roots tapping, water flattering itself against pilings. I swept my flashlight along the underside. Cord beam true, joist hangers snug, carriage bolts bright in their countersinks. I checked deflection at midspan with my truck. Less than a quarter inch. Exactly what Miguel and I designed for. It wasn't the bridge I doubted. It was people. At daybreak the next morning, a second truck came, early enough to outrun objections. I stepped onto the decking and raised a hand like a movie traffic cop. The driver slowed. Karen sat in the passenger seat and rolled her window down, sunglasses big enough to qualify as riot gear. "Morning," I said. "You're over the weight limit." She pointed toward the empty future where courts might someday exist. "Community project. You're obstructing progress." "The sign says 5 tons, I replied. "You're 3 times that with a half load." "That sign isn't board approved," she snapped. I leaned in just enough for her to hear the smile in my voice. Neither was the bridge. She rolled up the window. The driver revved. I stepped aside and let the creek keep minutes. The boards hummed under the drum slosh. The handrails quivered like reeds. The truck made it across barely. As it passed, I saw it. A hairline crack on one plank, silver in the sun where the sealer had split. Not failure. A warning. That's when I put up the second sign, the uglier one. "Trespassers will be prosecuted. I hate threats. But sometimes words need teeth to be heard over engines." I mounted 2 trail cameras high in the alders, angled for faces and license plates. I logged crossings in a spiral notebook, times, loads, who was driving. Data is just a story with receipts. A third truck arrived at noon, as if hubris needed a trilogy. I didn't wave. I didn't argue. I didn't put my body in front of it. I stood on the bank and watched physics draft a complaint letter more eloquent than anything I could write. The decking bowed. The rail stanchions groaned. Midspan, fine under normal life, whispered the kind of sentence only engineers hear. "I can do this once, maybe twice. I won't forgive you." Late afternoon, Karen taped another notice to my post. Final warning. Pink paper this time, like color could soften a threat. Failure to comply will result in escalating fines. I photographed her hand pressing the tape. Nail polish, HOA bracelet, that little gavel charm ring she wore like a crown you could wash dishes in. The camera caught her smile too. The smile of someone mistaking patience for weakness. That evening Hannah brought peach cobbler and gossip. "They're telling people you refused to let an ambulance cross last year," she said, disgusted even as she repeated it. "Funny," I said. "I built it wide enough for one." "People are scared to speak up," she said. "People should try measuring instead." She laughed, then stared at the cracked plank like it was a bruise. "So, you going to do something?" "Oh, I am," I said. "But I'm not shouting. I'm documenting. Some fights are won with volume. Mine would be won with ounces, the weight of paper, the soft click of a shutter, the careful turn of a wrench on a hidden bolt. They had a committee. I had gravity, and gravity doesn't need a vote." By sunset, with the creek back to its vowel sounds, I made a decision that landed in my chest like a nail set straight with one clean blow. Tomorrow I'd stop defending. I'd stop trying to explain to people who'd chosen not to understand. If they wanted to keep crossing a line, I'd show them where it was in a language they couldn't ignore. I locked my porch gate, poured 2 fingers of good bourbon, and pulled up the trail cam feeds on my tablet. One on the approach, one at midspan. In the quiet I could hear it all. The faint whir of infrared, the creek's steady chorus, and underneath, a distant drumbeat on the county road, patient as weather. They'd come again. They always did. And when they did, the bridge and the law behind it would be ready. Miguel showed up the next morning in his old blue Ford, toolbox rattling in the bed, thermos in hand. He wore that slow grin that said he'd survived enough foolishness to recognize it early. "Heard you've got a traffic problem," he said. "More like a weight problem," I told him, walking him down to the bridge. We stood a long time, listening to water curl around the pilings. Miguel crouched, tapped a stringer with a wrench, and nodded. "Still solid. Your work holds." "Yeah," I said. "Built it for life, not for HOA egos." He chuckled, dry as gravel. "So what's the plan, amigo? Fix it? Or teach a lesson?" "Both," I said. Miguel rubbed his jaw. "A lesson in engineering." Back in my garage, oil and cedar mixing with coffee, I unrolled the original plans across the workbench. The blue paper had faded, edges curled like old leaves. "You remember when we designed the mid-span reinforcement?" I asked. He traced a line. "Dual-plate girders tied with carriage bolts, rated for a 15-ton distributed load." "Right," I said. "But look here. If these 4 bolts come out, the load shifts to the outer beams." Miguel finished my thought. "Still fine for light traffic. But anything heavier than 10 tons. Center gives just enough to make a point." He stared at me, half impressed, half warning. "You're not trying to kill anybody, right?" "I'm trying to let physics do what HOA meetings never could," I said. "Set boundaries." Miguel poured coffee and leaned back. "You'll need proof. They'll call it sabotage." "I've got proof," I said, tapping my laptop. "Trail cams, timestamps, truck weights, crossings logged." He lifted an eyebrow. "Still, if you're going to make a statement, make it clean." "Engineers don't break things," he said. "We demonstrate failure modes." "That's exactly what I'm doing." That afternoon we worked. I pulled decking near midspan, unbolting plank by plank, while Miguel checked angles with a laser level. We swapped the central reinforcement plates with lookalikes connected by shear pins, pins designed to bend and disengage under overload. Nothing illegal, nothing unsafe for normal use, but a cement truck would feel it like an earthquake. We tested it with my pickup. The bridge creaked, held, and settled back into silence. Perfect. Then we wired a motion-triggered camera under the deck aimed upward, and another on the far bank watching the approach. Every truck, every driver, every plate on record. By dusk, the bridge looked untouched. I swept sawdust, rinsed mud off my hands. Miguel stood beside me, eyes catching the last light. "You ever think about retirement?" he asked. "I did," I said. "Apparently I'm the entertainment committee now." He laughed. "You're crazy, Mike, but I like it." Before he left, he clapped my shoulder. Let them walk into their own mistake. Don't rush it. I won't, I said. Karen's too proud to slow down. Over the next few days I waited. HOA trucks rumbled through the neighborhood, horns blaring, dust rising. Karen strutted in her red HOA windbreaker, clipboard in hand, inspecting like she was reviewing troops. One morning I was sipping coffee on the porch when that familiar diesel growl rolled up from the cul-de-sac. I opened the live feed. Karen was there, of course, hands on hips, directing the driver toward my bridge like she owned it. Adrenaline tightened in my chest. "Here we go," I whispered. The truck crawled down the slope, its weight pressing into the planks like a slow heartbeat. The bridge flexed within normal deflection. Then it reached center, and the shear pins did their quiet work. A subtle sag, polite complaint, just enough tilt to make the load speak. The driver stopped. Karen leaned out, shouting something I couldn't hear. The truck reversed with a groan, then eased forward again. It made it across, barely, and a puff of wood dust rose where the joint had bent. I smiled. Not yet. Soon. That night Miguel called. Test run. Successful, I said. Bridge spoke politely. He chuckled. Next time, maybe louder. Next time's coming. 2 mornings later, the HOA scheduled a major pour for the tennis courts. 3 trucks. Karen supervising, bragging to anyone who'd listen that the bridge nonsense was resolved. By 7 a.m., I was on the porch with black coffee and a camera zoomed tight. The creek gleamed like glass, still and patient. The first truck arrived, drum spinning, cement sloshing like a giant stomach. The second followed close. Karen walked ahead, waving a rolled blueprint like she was conducting an orchestra of arrogance. When the first truck hit the bridge, the decking groaned. Birds lifted. Water rippled below. Then the second rolled on, and the sound changed, no longer creaking wood, but a low wooden moan. A shear pin let go with a clean metallic snap. Midspan dipped just enough. The truck's front wheels shifted. The driver slammed the brakes, but momentum had already signed the check. The cab pitched down. The drum tilted. Cement surged forward and spilled through the open hatch, gray sludge pouring into the creek in slow, awful beauty, frosting rocks and choking water. The truck's front axle dipped into shallow water with a splash loud enough to carry up the street. Karen screamed. Not pain, pure disbelief wrapped in rage. You're done, Mike. You're going to jail. I stepped off my porch and walked toward her as calm as a Sunday sermon. Morning, Karen, I said. You might want to read the sign next time. She stabbed a finger at me. You sabotaged the bridge. No, I said. You sabotaged common sense. A police officer arrived. Someone she'd clearly called ahead, expecting to watch my humiliation. He took in the scene. 1 stuck cement truck, 1 furious HOA president, and my intact sign with its 5-ton limit. Ma'am, he said carefully. This is private property. There's a posted restriction. But it's a community route, Karen snapped. He glanced at her clipboard. Do you have documentation of that? Her silence answered. I pulled up the video feed and showed him. Overweight vehicle. Warning sign visible. Ignored. He nodded. Looks clear. Miguel arrived then and leaned close. You planned this too well. Planned it just enough, I murmured. Karen tried climbing onto the truck to retrieve her clipboard, slipped, and ended up ankle-deep in cementy water. The crowd, neighbors, curious onlookers, tried not to laugh. They failed. The officer offered a hand. Karen refused it. Pride always weighs more than cement. As the tow crew began winching the truck free, I stood back and let the moment play itself out. The bridge held scarred, but triumphant. It carried the weight and delivered the message. That evening I watched the footage frame by frame. The snap, the splash, the instant Karen's eyes widened. That was art. I saved it on 3 drives and sent a copy to my lawyer. Karen didn't take losing quietly. By sundown she'd filed a county complaint and blasted a mass email accusing me of reckless endangerment and deliberate destruction of shared infrastructure. I poured a drink, looked out at the bridge silvered by moonlight, and smiled. Let her file whatever she wanted. I had video, permits, and physics, and it wasn't over. Because if Karen thought a half-stuck cement truck was the end of my patience, she had no idea what the next chapter of this little war would bring. The bridge drew the line. Now I'd make sure everyone knew exactly where it was carved. By dawn, the neighborhood buzzed like a hornet nest. The HOA email thread exploded. Subjects in all caps. Urgent. Incident. Private bridge failure. Community safety at risk. You'd think I'd dropped a freeway, not inconvenienced a cement mixer. I woke to what I thought were helicopters. Turned out it was 2 drones hovering over my property, both with bright HOA stickers. One controller even had Karen's husband's name printed on it. Subtle. I stepped out in my robe, coffee steaming, and waved up at them. Make sure you get my good side. One drone dipped like it wanted to argue. Miguel rolled in a few minutes later, grinning. Your bridge is trending. Trending. He held up his phone. Someone had posted a 30-second clip. HOA president's cement truck sinks on homeowner's bridge. Instant karma. Views climbing by the second. The thumbnail was perfect. Karen mid-scream, half-submerged, clipboard clutched like a drowning flag. I sipped my coffee. Well, at least she built something viral. Miguel snorted. You'd better lawyer up. She won't take this lying down. By noon, I had 2 official notices. One from the HOA board accusing me of reckless endangerment, and a cease and desist from Karen herself, typed in Comic Sans. She'd CC'd the sheriff, the county inspector, and, for reasons known only to Karen, the local garden club. I printed it and stuck it on my fridge like a trophy. That afternoon Karen stomped down my gravel lane with 2 HOA security guys in fluorescent vests, clipboards in hand. They stopped at the bridge, where the truck's remains were still being winched out. Karen was red-faced, hair plastered to her forehead. You destroyed community property, Mike. Community property? I said. Must have missed the part where the HOA paid to build it. This bridge services our development, she snapped. You've endangered residents. I pointed at the sign still bolted to the post. Private bridge. 5-ton limit. Your trucks endangered themselves. She jabbed a manicured finger at me. You tampered with the structure. Miguel, behind me, said quietly, Lady, he's the one who built it. Karen ignored him. You'll pay for this. The board voted unanimously to fine you $25,000 for property damage. I lifted an eyebrow. Property damage to my own property? As president, I can assess penalties for actions that harm community value. Then maybe fine yourself, I said, for pouring cement into the creek. One of the security guys snorted and disguised it as a cough. Karen spun on him, then snapped back at me. We'll see you in court, Mr. Carter. Looking forward to it, I said. Bring a bridge expert. He'll need one. She stormed off, entourage scrambling to keep up. Miguel watched them go. You poke the bear, she brings drones. I build a fence, she brings lawyers, I said. Next is probably tanks. By evening the video hit 100,000 views. Comments rolled in classic HOA overreach. Gravity 1, bureaucracy 0. Someone edited it with dramatic music and labeled it Cement Karma. Kelvin's Drone Edition. I didn't post it, but I didn't mind. Karen turned the HOA Facebook page into propaganda overnight. Grainy bridge photos. Captions like, Dangerous structure collapsed under illegal modifications. HOA taking action. I commented, Correction. Bridge held. Truck collapsed. Thanks for the free advertising. Within an hour, it had hundreds of likes and laughing reactions. The next day, a county inspector arrived. Older guy, tan uniform, clipboard thick as a phone book. Got a complaint, he said, stepping carefully onto the bridge. Said you built this without a permit. Built it 15 years ago, I said, handing him a folder. Original county approval. He flipped through, nodding. Looks fine. Karen must have been watching because 10 minutes later she came charging down again, heels clacking like gunfire. What are you doing here? She demanded. Inspection, the man said calmly. Everything checks out. Mr. Carter's bridge is up to code. Karen's voice jumped an octave. That's impossible. It collapsed. He gestured at the bridge. Still standing, aside from a dented rail. Looks solid to me. She opened her mouth, closed it, and stomped away muttering about bias and conspiracy. The inspector watched her go. I said, "She only likes authority on weekdays." He laughed. "For what it's worth, you're fine legally. But if she pushes, keep your records tight." "Oh, they're tighter than her tennis court budget," I said. He grinned. "Good luck, Mr. Carter." Over the next week, Karen's smear campaign backfired. Local news ran with it. They loved the video, the absurd headline, "Cement truck meets its match in small-town bridge dispute." They interviewed me. I wore my cleanest flannel and a neutral smile. "Mr. Carter," the reporter asked, "some say this was sabotage." I looked into the camera. Physics doesn't take sides. It just enforces rules. It aired that night. Karen tried claiming she'd been misrepresented. But the internet had already crowned her Cement Karen. Memes everywhere. Her face on traffic signs. Bridge emojis under every comment. Even the HOA board started to fracture. Thomas, a retired lawyer on the board, stopped by quietly one morning. "Off the record," he said. "You're not the villain." She overstepped. "Off the record." I said, "I know." He smiled faintly. "Half the neighborhood's tired of her. If she keeps pushing, she'll destroy herself." I watched him drive off and thought maybe she already had. Still, Karen wasn't done. She called an emergency meeting about infrastructure collapse. Flyers hit mailboxes like Amber Alerts. I wasn't missing that show. The community hall packed in tight. Folding chairs, murmurs, phones recording. Karen stood at the front under a projector slide titled, "Public Safety Threat." The Carter Bridge incident she launched into a speech dripping with righteous fury. Then she played a video, my bridge footage clearly taken from her drone recordings. The crowd gasped as the truck tilted. Then Karen made her mistake. She froze the frame and shouted, "This man intentionally weakened a community bridge to harm HOA property." I stood. "Community bridge?" I asked. "Want to see the deed, Karen?" I walked up and handed her a copy. Page 3, Section 4. Private easement ends 50 feet before the creek. "You've been trespassing for months." Whispers erupted. A neighbor raised his hand. "Wait. So the HOA's been using his bridge illegally?" Karen went pale. "That's irrelevant to safety." Thomas called from the back. "It's completely relevant." The room turned into chaos, arguments, phones out, people filming. Karen slammed her clipboard on the podium. "This meeting is adjourned." Outside, Miguel walked beside me. "She's unraveling." "Let her," I said. Sometimes the best revenge is letting someone hang their own argument. That night, I sat on my porch watching moonlight ripple on the creek. The bridge waited, quiet and loyal. I ran my hand along the rail. "They called you dangerous," I murmured. "But you're just honest." The trail cam blinked under the deck. Karen would come again, lawyers, inspectors, maybe another truck. Next time, I'd be ready with more than physics. Next time, I'd bring the law. 2 days later, the first lawsuit landed on my porch. Thick envelope, gold HOA seal, and that faint perfume of arrogance you only get from papers signed by Karen. She accused me of willful property destruction, emotional distress, and intentional interference with community infrastructure. She wanted $250,000. I almost laughed hard enough to spill coffee. Emotional distress? Maybe from staring at her own reflection too long. Miguel arrived as I finished reading. He saw the envelope, whistled low. "Looks expensive." "Yeah," I said. "For her." He leaned on the porch rail. "You going to fight this?" "Oh, I'm not fighting," I said. "I'm documenting." Fighting's loud. Documentation's permanent. The next week, my property turned into a circus. HOA contractors showed up snapping photos. A county drone hovered overhead. Someone measured my mailbox. Don't ask me why. Karen strutted around with a new folder labeled evidence. smiling that brittle politician smile like she'd already written my obituary. I started wearing sunglasses so I could smirk without giving her the satisfaction. By Friday, local TV ran it again. A serious anchor beside my bridge photo said, "New developments in the HOA bridge dispute." They played Karen's interview, voice trembling theatrically. "He put the entire community in danger. We're lucky no one was killed." Then they cut to me. "If you ignore the sign, the problem isn't the bridge." Guess which clip people believed? Karen tried to turn HOA money into her war chest. Email screaming Community Legal Defense Fund. Thomas pushed back, emailing the charter with a highlighted section. HOA funds couldn't be used for private lawsuits. He ended with, "If Karen wants to sue, she does so at her own expense." The next day, her emails stopped. When court got pricey, she tried public pressure. Flyers appeared on lamp posts, bulletin boards, the grocery store window. Grainy still of my face stamped. Danger 2 Community Safety Hannah texted me a photo. "You're famous again." I replied, "Can't wait for the autograph requests." That night, I took my truck, a staple gun, and my sense of humor for a walk. Every flyer I found, I posted my own beside it. Same image, but stamped in thick black letters. Wanted. Common sense last seen at HOA meeting by morning. My version was getting more traction than hers. A few days later, the sheriff stopped by, jeans, baseball cap, no uniform. "Mike," he said, "I'm not here to stir things, just making sure it's safe." "Safer than a cement truck," I said. He grinned. "County records show it's your bridge. No easement, no shared access. You're in the clear. Just keep the peace." "I've been trying," I said, "but peace keeps driving 12 tons over my bridge." He laughed, tipped his cap, and left. Karen must have watched from her window, because minutes later I got an email. Subject: Trespassing investigation. I saw a police vehicle on your property today. This behavior confirms our concerns. The HOA will not tolerate intimidation tactics. I replied, "Thanks for the concern, Karen." He stopped by to compliment the bridge. No response. But it was serious now. Karen filed in county court and hired Hamilton and Wade LLP. Downtown, expensive, the kind of firm that charges by the syllable. I hired Lisa Barrett, sharp, calm, specializes in property disputes. She reviewed my documents, videos, blueprints, and smiled like a chess player seeing Mate in 3. "She doesn't have a case," Lisa said. "You've got ownership, surveys, posted restrictions, and video proof her trucks ignored them." "She's not trying to win," I said. "She's trying to exhaust me." Lisa leaned back. "Then we make her pay for the privilege. Waiting is how lawsuits really start. Endless grinding. Emails. Motions. Stamps. Karen filing new nonsense every other day like she was throwing darts in the dark. Lisa told me to stay calm and stay quiet, especially online. Hard advice, because while the legal wheels creaked forward, Karen kept waging psychological war. HOA newsletters suddenly warned about dangerous private structures. Someone heard her at the cafe telling people I was under investigation for property fraud. Fraud. That word lit a fire in my chest. I wanted to storm into the next meeting and slam the deed on a table. Lisa stopped me. "You'll win faster in court than in a shouting match." She was right. Silence still wasn't my favorite habitat. Miguel showed up most days with tacos, bad jokes, and gossip. "You're the main character of this subdivision," he said once. "Half think you're a folk hero. Half think you're a terrorist with power tools." "Sounds accurate," I said. "You should see the memes," he added, showing me his phone. Someone had pasted my face onto a bridge troll holding a stop sign. I laughed. Fit better than I liked. Karen escalated again. Dug up my old permit records and started claiming my bridge certification had expired. She even wrote an opinion letter to the local paper saying I violated state waterway standards. It stung anyway, so I answered the way I always did. Not with noise, with paper. I spent a weekend digging through attic boxes until I found a dusty binder labeled Ironwood Creek Survey, 2009. Inside were county drainage assessments stamped and signed by the Department of Natural Resources. Carter Bridge private crossing. No municipal maintenance required. It also confirmed the creek wasn't a public waterway. HOA jurisdiction 0. I scanned everything, backed it up, and sent it to Lisa. Her reply came fast. This changes everything. Don't show anyone until the hearing. I didn't, but I slept with that quiet weapon sitting in my inbox. Meanwhile, the board kept collapsing. Thomas resigned as interim president after receiving hate mail. Hannah stepped in temporarily, promising civility. Karen still hovered like weather. At the next open meeting, Karen stood trembling theatrically. Mike Carter has destroyed our sense of community. He's mocked our authority, humiliated this board, endangered our families. If we don't act, what message does that send? Hannah replied calmly, that we respect property rights and basic decency. The room murmured approval. Karen turned red, slammed her folder, and stormed out. The next morning someone egged my mailbox. HOA-approved eggs, I assumed. Lisa called later. Preliminary hearing next month. Be ready. Karen's attorney will go hard. They'll paint you as negligent. Negligent for building a bridge? For daring to own it, Lisa said. She wasn't kidding. In the weeks before court, strange cars idled near my driveway. Drones flew lower. Once I caught a guy in a reflective vest poking my fence with a clipboard. When I approached, he mumbled inspection and hurried off. I installed motion lights, added another camera, one aimed straight toward the HOA office down the road. If they wanted to watch, I'd provide good angles. Hannah brought banana bread one afternoon. Figured you could use support, she said. Thanks, I said. What's the latest rumor? She grinned. That you built an underground bunker under the bridge. I burst out laughing. If only. Maybe I should charge tolls. Then she sobered. People are waking up. They're tired of her control. She's unraveling. I hope so, I said. I'm running out of coffee. From the outside, things got quiet, no fresh emails, no new flyers. But the machine was working underneath. Karen wasn't retreating. She was regrouping. One evening, an unknown number called. Mr. Carter? It's Jacob, HOA treasurer. What's going on? His voice dropped. Karen's been editing documents. Editing? She changed the HOA map on record, the one showing property lines. Moved the boundary 50 feet onto your land. My hand tightened around the phone. That's forgery. I know, he said fast. I'm not getting dragged into it. I'm emailing you the original before she changed it. Do what you want. Just don't mention me. He hung up. 5 minutes later, the email arrived. Original HOA map versus revised. The shift was blatant. My property lines sliding like tectonic plates obeying Karen. I forwarded it to Lisa immediately. Her response. Unbelievable. Keep it quiet. We'll use it when it hurts most. I smiled. The bridge wasn't the only trap now. Weeks passed. The video hit 2 million views. Merch popped up online. Don't cross my bridge mugs. Cement happens shirts. I didn't make a dime, but the irony tasted sweet. Karen avoided me completely. No drones. No shouting. No letters. It was eerie, like the woods before a wildfire. I used the time to repair the bridge for real. Swapped warped decking, retightened bolts, fresh sealant. Miguel helped, humming. There's something poetic, he said, about fixing what they tried to ruin. Poetic justice, I said. He winked. Save that for court. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. Moonlight shimmered on the creek like spilled mercury. I walked onto the bridge barefoot, feeling every vibration through the boards. This thing started as wood and hardware. Now it was a symbol, boundaries, patience, the line I refused to let anyone erase. I leaned on the rail and whispered to the dark, tomorrow we end this. The creek gurgled like it agreed. Morning came sharp and cold. I dressed in a clean shirt, slid my evidence folder under my arm, and met Lisa in the courthouse lobby. She looked calm, ready. You ready? She asked. Born ready, I said. But let's make sure she's not. Karen was there pacing in heels too high for common sense. clutching her binder like a shield. She saw me and hissed, "Enjoy it while it lasts." "Oh, I intend to," I said. Lisa gave me a small smile. "Stay calm. She'll talk herself into the hole." The courthouse in Carson County wasn't built for drama. More for zoning disputes and tax appeals and the occasional drunk who punched a mailbox. That morning it looked like a stage. Reporters lined the hallway. HOA members filled benches in pastels, whispering like they'd come to watch an execution. Karen sat perfect in a red blazer and pearls. Her lawyer, young, sleek, expensive, looked like he'd practiced outrage in a mirror. Lisa leaned close. "She'll overplay it. Let her." The judge entered. Gray hair, steady eyes, a face that said he'd seen enough HOA nonsense for 10 lifetimes. Case 22 to 3000. 417 Ironwood Homeowners Association versus Michael Carter. Karen's lawyer stood like he was stepping onto Broadway. "Your Honor, this case is about negligence. One man's reckless disregard for community safety. He tampered with a bridge used by residents, causing a collapse that endangered lives and cost thousands. He clicked a remote. The screen showed the photo. Truck tilted, Karen mid-scream. This image represents the danger created by the defendant." Lisa murmured, "That image represents your win. They just don't know it." The judge nodded. "Mr. Carter, opening." Lisa rose, calm and clean. "Your Honor, this isn't negligence. It's entitlement. My client built, owns, and maintains a private bridge on his land. The HOA trespassed repeatedly, ignored posted weight limits, and caused its own damage. We have surveys, documentation, and video proof." The judge's eyebrow twitched, his version of applause. Karen took the stand first, marching up like she was auditioning for television. "It was a beautiful morning until he sabotaged community property," she testified. "I was overseeing our tennis court project for everyone's benefit. Then the bridge gave way. It was terrifying." "And you believe he intentionally weakened it?" her lawyer asked. "I know he did. He's hated the HOA since day one. He told me gravity would teach us boundaries." Murmurs rolled through the room. Lisa stood. "Mrs. Peterson, how many times did HOA vehicles cross Mr. Carter's bridge before this?" Karen hesitated. "Several. 10, 12. And each time, you ignored the posted 5-ton limit?" She stiffened. "Those signs weren't official." "You mean," Lisa said, "they weren't approved by you?" Chuckles popped in the benches. Her lawyer objected. The judge waved it off. Lisa continued. "Are you aware your cement truck weighed nearly 12 tons? Karen froze. "And are you aware the county lists the Carter Bridge as a private access crossing?" That's incorrect." Lisa held up the county document. "Here's the official plat. Want to read it?" Karen's smile twitched and died. "Good," Lisa said. "The judge will." Miguel testified next, denim jacket, work boots, common sense with a pulse. "You helped build the bridge 15 years ago?" Lisa asked. "Yes, ma'am." "Built to standard?" "Better than standard. We overbuilt it. Safe for 10 tons. Maybe 11 in a pinch. But you don't argue with physics." "And the HOA truck was nearly 12? Miguel shrugged. "You do the math." Karen's lawyer tried to corner him. "So you're saying the bridge was designed to fail?" Miguel leaned forward. "No, it was designed to be respected." Laughter broke out. Even the judge smiled before tapping his gavel. After recess, I took the stand. "Mr. Carter," Lisa asked, "your intention that morning?" "To protect my property," I said. "To remind people boundaries matter." "Did you intentionally endanger anyone?" "No. I built that bridge to carry families, not egos." Karen's lawyer paced. "You admit you modified the bridge?" "Yes," I said. "I repaired it, like any responsible homeowner. You adjusted its structure. I reinforced it." He leaned in, triumphant. "Is it true you installed a mechanism that shifts under weight?" "Yes," I said. "It's called load distribution. It's in any engineering handbook." He blinked. And what happened when the HOA trucks exceeded the limit? He pressed. I kept my voice even. The system distributed the load. He straightened, satisfied. Exactly, so you created the failure. I looked at him. No. The overload happened. The cement distributed into the creek. The courtroom erupted. The judge didn't stop them this time. By late afternoon, Karen's lawyer was choking on his own objections. Every piece he offered, drone photos, complaint letters, the revised HOA map, turned into a weapon against them. Then the judge leaned forward. Mrs. Peterson, this revised HOA map, where did it come from? Karen stammered. It was approved by our board. Lisa stood. Your Honor, we have the original version sent to my client by the HOA treasurer before it was altered. The judge compared them side by side. Silence fell hard. This boundary shift, he said slowly, is illegal. Karen's lawyer went pale. Your Honor, I had no knowledge. The judge raised a hand. Enough. This isn't about a bridge anymore. It's about falsified documents and harassment. Mrs. Peterson, I strongly advise you to remain silent before you make this worse. Lisa closed her folder. No further witnesses. The judge leaned back, eyes sweeping the room. I've seen HOA disputes over mailboxes and lawn height. But this is the first time I've watched someone drown their credibility in wet cement. Soft laughter. Findings for the defendant, Mr. Carter. Claims dismissed with prejudice. This matter is referred for review of potential document tampering. The gavel fell like thunder. Karen sat frozen, eyes glassy. Her lawyer deflated. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Outside, Lisa leaned in. That's checkmate. Not quite, I said. One more move. She lifted an eyebrow. The ace you held back? Yeah, I said. Time to play it. The courthouse emptied like a storm passing over dry ground. Karen stayed at the table staring at the gavel like it had nearly taken her head off. Her lawyer packed up with the careful misery of a man who bills by the syllable. Lisa and I stepped into the cool air. Clean win, she said. Not clean enough, I replied. She'll appeal and rewrite the story. Lisa smiled. You've still got that ace. I nodded. The next morning, the HOA called an emergency post-trial meeting. I went not to argue but to finish it. The hall was packed. Karen sat at the front, pale but defiant. Navy blazer like color could rebuild credibility. She started, voice shaking but polished. The court's decision was based on incomplete information. The HOA will be filing an appeal. We will not surrender the safety of this community to Karen. I cut in gently, stepping forward. You might want to pause. Heads turned. I brought something the court didn't need yesterday, I said, lifting a thick envelope. But everyone needs now. Her eyes narrowed. More theatrics? Documentation. Thomas, reinstated on the board, gestured toward the projector. Let's hear him. I plugged in a flash drive. The lights dimmed. On the screen, a scanned document stamped in red. U.S. Federal Highway Administration Private Access Corridor License. 2006. The room went quiet. This, I said, is a 20-year federal permit issued for the Carter property authorizing a private access crossing over Ironwood Creek. The creek is designated non-navigable and privately managed under state and federal law. Next slide. A letter from the Department of Transportation dated 6 months prior confirming renewal and verification. Meaning, I said, not only is the bridge mine, the land and water beneath it are excluded from HOA oversight by federal exemption. I looked at Karen. You never owned it. You never had the right to set foot on it. Gasps moved through the crowd. You fabricated this, Karen snapped. If I did, I said, call the DOT. Ask for verification. I'm sure they'll love being dragged into your next HOA memo. Miguel whistled from the back. Well, I'll be damned. Karen's composure cracked. You're exploiting a technicality. A technicality? I repeated. It's property law. You should try reading it. Hannah stood. Karen, you lied to us. You said the creek and bridge were community assets. You used HOA funds for a lawsuit we didn't approve. That's not true, Karen shouted. Thomas raised a hand. It is true. We reviewed the accounts. You diverted nearly $40,000 from maintenance funds to legal fees. The board never voted. Murmurs swelled. Someone called out, "Is that why our streetlights stopped working?" Karen stammered. I acted in good faith. No, I said quietly. You acted in control. There's a difference. Voices rose, tired and angry. Resign. Resign. Karen slammed her hand on the table. You think you've won, Mike? You're just one man with a bridge. I met her stare. You're right, but that bridge carried truth, and you drove right over it. Laughter rolled through the room. Not cruel, relieved. Thomas cleared his throat. Effective immediately, I moved to remove Mrs. Peterson from her role as HOA president for misuse of funds, falsifying documents, and defamation of a homeowner. The vote passed unanimously. Karen stood trembling, eyes searching for an ally. No one moved. She gathered her folders and stormed out. For once there were no drones, no cameras, no audience left to admire her performance. Outside, as I loaded my bag into my truck, she stopped beside me. You think this is over? She hissed. It is for you, I said. But if you want to cross that bridge again, ask permission first. She opened her mouth, then shut it and walked away. A week later, I received a letter from the new HOA board. No threats, no fines. An apology, Mr. Carter. The Ironwood HOA formally apologizes for the misconduct of our former president. We acknowledge your legal ownership of the Carter Bridge and surrounding property. Attached, a check for $1,000 reimbursement. I didn't cash it. I framed it and hung it in my hallway. Better art than anything I could buy. Life in Ironwood changed. The drones vanished. The tennis court project died. Meetings turned from shouting matches into potlucks. Neighbors waved again instead of staring at their windshields like waving was a liability. Even the creek sounded calmer, like it had been holding its breath. Miguel came by one evening with 2 beers. We sat on the bridge rail watching the sun melt the water into gold. So, he said, what's next for the man who beat an HOA? Retirement. For real this time, I said. He laughed. Sure. Until someone parks on your property line again. I shrugged. Then I'll build another bridge. We sat in silence as the light faded, and I felt something close to peace. Not quiet, but closure. A few days later, I posted a short video. Me standing on the bridge holding my old survey map. Sometimes, I said to the camera, you don't need revenge. You need the truth, and the patience to let gravity do the rest. It went viral again. Comments poured in. Engineering as art. Cement karma. HOA stories never disappoint. I smiled, not for fame, but because somewhere out there, someone else was dealing with their own Karen, wondering if they could hold the line. They could. Sometimes all you need is a bridge. Now when I walk across those planks, freshly sealed, solid, I remember every letter, every meeting, every shouted lie that tried to rewrite what was mine. The boards still creak a little, the way old friends do when they stretch. The creek murmurs below in a language older than law, older than pride. Halfway across, I pause and whisper, we did it, because it was never just land or lawsuits or even winning. It was balance, the kind nature keeps long after people forget who drew the boundary. Sometimes justice doesn't need a hammer, just a little weight. Some battles aren't fought with fists or fury. They're fought with patience, proof, and principle. When someone crosses your line, don't rush to shout louder. Stand firmer. Truth has a way of holding its own, just like a well-built bridge. This isn't a revenge story. It's a respect story about how arrogance collapses under the quiet weight of accountability, and how standing your ground doesn't always look like confrontation. Sometimes it's just knowing what's yours and refusing to let anyone rewrite it. If you've ever dealt with an HOA that forgot its limits, or a neighbor who mistook kindness for weakness, remember, calm isn't surrender. Silence isn't defeat. Every bridge has its limit, and when people ignore it, they eventually fall in on their own. Now it's your turn. Have you ever faced someone like Karen? Share your story in the comments. I read them all. And if you enjoyed this, subscribe and stay tuned. Because in this neighborhood, there's always another story waiting to be crossed.